Hello, as always, Masha tells you stories and welcomes you to the 23rd episode of the podcast Film Grazie Artis, or just Film if shortly. Here I share tales that inspire and reveal unique experiences of creators, makers and lovers of all kinds. I hope you find this program interesting, whether you practice art or simply enjoy observing how human beings search for dignity, or voice, or space to exist fully. Because today we're speaking about something subtle yet persistent. What happens when outdated expectations made a change in reality, and how some still struggle to accept that shift. Now, I want you to close your eyes for a moment and imagine a dark room. Not empty, just quiet, heavy. The air feels still, almost thick, as if something is about to happen or already has. Now, slowly, a light begins to fall across the darkness. Not bright, just enough to reveal shapes. Fabric, hands, faces. Two women emerge from the shadows. They're close, very close, leaning forward with intention. Their sleeves are rolled, their bodies engaged. This is not a passive moment. This is effort. This is force. Their hands do not tremble. There is a man beneath them. He resists, but only for a moment. You can feel it, the shift, the precise instant where resistance turns into inevitability. The light catches their faces, calm, focused, unwavering. No hesitation, no softness, no permission asked. This is Judith Slain Holofernes, painted by Artemisia Gentileschi, and this is where the discomfort begins. Because the question is not only what we see, but why it unsettles us. Why does power, when held by a woman, feel like disruption? Why does action, when it comes from her hands, appear excessive or misplaced? We are used to a different story. A story where power belongs naturally to one side and restrained to the other. Where some are expected to act and others to endure. For centuries, women were not simply denied power, they were denied the right to define it. And so, when we look at this painting, it is often interpreted as revenge. But look again, there is nothing chaotic there. There is a precision, clarity, control. This is not a loss of power. It is its redefinition. Because a fight, in its simplest form, is born from limitation, from having no other way. But what we see here is not limitation, it is decision. Not reaction, but intention. And beyond this image, across centuries, women have demonstrated another kind of response. Not louder, but deeper. Not confrontational, but transformative. They learned, they observed, they created. They entered spaces that were never designed for them, and instead of breaking against those walls, they began slowly to reshape them. Think of Marie Curie. She didn't argue her place in science through noise. She answered with discovery, with precision so undeniable that redefined the field itself. Or think of Katherine Johnson, whose calculations carried human beings beyond this planet, quietly, accurately, without spectacle. For a long time, her name was not widely known, and yet her work was essential. There were many like them, invisible figures, not absent, just unseen, in art, in science, in medicine, in every structure that defines our world. And so, closer than we sometimes allow ourselves to notice, in the quiet architecture of everyday life. In homes that feel whole because someone has made them so. In the early years of every human being, where care, patience, and presence shape a mind before it can even speak. In the emotional fabric that holds people together when things begin to fall apart. Women have carried these roles for centuries. They have created comfort, they have given time, they have offered attention, support, continuity, not as something extraordinary, but as something expected. And perhaps that is why this often goes unspoken, because what is constant becomes invisible. What is always given is rarely questioned, and what is rarely questioned is rarely acknowledged. There is no monument to a moment of quiet care, no public recognition for years of steady presence, and yet without it, nothing else would stand. Not art, not science, not progress of any kind. And so when we speak about contribution, we are not only speaking about what is seen, we are speaking about what has always been here, holding everything together without demanding to be named. For centuries, when women created something powerful, the world didn't quite know how to look at it. And today, when we assume that this confusion has been resolved, but recent events suggest otherwise. As new missions to the moon are being prepared under Artemis program led by NASA, humanity is once again stepping into a moment of historic visibility. The program carries a clear and deliberate goal to land the first woman and the first person of color on the moon. This is not symbolic decoration, it's a structural shift in presentation within one of the most technological demanding environments ever created by humans. Among the astronauts involved in Artemis missions are highly trained professionals, such as Christina Koch, whose qualifications are defined not by narrative, but by years of rigorous selection, engineering experience, and operational experience. And yet, when this reality enters public space, especially online, the reaction often reveals something less about space exploration and more about perception. Instead of engaging with competence, training, or scientific achievement, a portion of commentary shifts toward identity. Not what has been achieved, but who is doing it. This is not an accidental reaction. From a psychological perspective, it reflects a status threat response. When traditional exclusive domains become more inclusive, it can disrupt internal assumptions about hierarchy and about who is expected to occupy positions of authority, intelligence, and technical mastery. For some individuals, this produces discomfort. And when discomfort is not consciously examined, it often transforms into dismissal or ridicule, or in more extreme cases, hostility. What is particularly notable is that this response is rarely proportional to the situation itself. It's not about any individual astronaut, it's about what their presence represents. A shift in visibility, a redistribution of expectation, a contradiction of inherited assumptions. And when people struggle to integrate this shift, mockery can become a psychological tool of rebalancing, not by elevating the self, but by attempting to diminish the other. That is why highly accomplished women in these fields can attract disproportionate criticism in certain spaces, especially from those who are not engaging at the same level of technical or professional responsibility. Because the reaction is not driven by evaluation, it is driven by perception. And perception, when shaped by outdated frameworks, can distort even clear achievement into something questioned, minimized, or reframed as illegitimate. So what we are observing is not a debate about ability, it's a psychological response to change. And like many such responses, it tells us more about the structure of expectation than about the people breaking through it. And yet, there is another layer to this reaction, less visible, but just as important. Because when criticism appears so quickly, so confidently, and so far removed from actual expertise, it raises a different question. What creates the feeling of authority in those who speak the loudest? In many online environments, expertise is no longer tied to training, responsibility, or lived experience. It is often replaced by something much more fragile, perceived confidence. A tone of certainty can begin to feel like knowledge itself, and this creates a psychological shortcut. If someone sounds authoritative, they are treated as if they are authoritative. From there, another mechanism emerges. When individuals feel uncertain about their own status, competence, or influence, they may unconsciously seek ways to reassert it. One of the easiest and most accessible way to do this is through evaluating of others, especially those in visible positions. Not because the evaluation is accurate, but because it produces a temporary sense of superiority. This is where online criticism often becomes distorted. It's not grounded in deep understanding of aerospace engineering, mission architecture, or astronaut training. It is grounded in emotional regulation, a way to manage internal insecurity through external judgment. And when a woman appears in a domain historically associated with authority and technical mastery, the contrast can intensify this reaction. Not because she lacks competence, on the contrary, her competence is precisely what makes the reaction more visible. In psychological terms, this can be linked to status threat and identity protection mechanisms. When existing mental models of hierarchy are challenged, the mind may attempt to restore equilibrium by simplifying the situation, by reducing complexity into familiarity, or achievement into doubt, or presence into exception. This is not always conscious. In fact, it rarely is. It often appears as certainty, as option, as so-called common sense. But underneath it, there is often something much less stable, a need to feel knowledgeable in a world where real expertise feels distant, and where visibility of others can quietly expose one's own lack of it. So the problem is not only misogyny as ideology, it also a broader cultural shift in how authority is performed, consumed, and claimed. And in that space, those who feel least secure in their own understanding are often the quickest to speak the loudest about others. Across many cultures, women were historically defined less as independent agents and more as relational beings, daughters, wives, mothers, whose value were measured through service, care, and continuity rather than autonomy or public achievement. This is not a matter of law or formal restriction. It is also something quieter, more persistent, embedded in language itself. Because language does not only describe reality, it also shapes what feels natural within it. In many cultural contexts, including those shaped by law and patriarchal histories, linguistic habits developed in ways that subtly reinforce hierarchy. Women were often spoken about primarily through relationship rather than individuality. Their identity appeared linguistically attached to others, belonging to a father, a husband, a family structure, while men were more frequently described as independent actors. Even when explicit inequality is no longer present in law or formal systems, these patterns can remain in everyday speech, jokes, expectations, and inherited expressions, not always as open hostility, but as assumptions that operate beneath awareness. This creates what can be called hidden inequality in language, not direct statements of inferiority, but repeated frameworks that quietly define who is seen as active and who is seen as supportive and who is expected to lead and who is expected to maintain. Over time, these patterns don't simply describe society, they participate in shaping it. And this is why historical structures of patriarchy are not only visible in institutions, but also in perception itself, in what feels normal, in what feels unexpected, and who is imagined as belonging to spaces of authority, science, creation, or exploration, and who is not. It is within this inherited background that reactions to women in visible roles still occur today, not always as conscious ideology, but often as unexamined expectation. And so we return to the image, to the darkness, to the light falling slowly across the canvas, to hands that do not hesitate, to presence that doesn't ask permission. From Artemisia studio to laboratories filled with equations written in silence, to spacecraft prepared for journeys beyond Earth, the pattern continues. Women have always been there, sometimes visible, often not, but always present in the structure of what we call progress. From the spaces of discovery to the spaces of creation, to the quieter work that holds human life together long before it is ever recognized as achievement, Women have shaped the world in ways that were not always named, but were always real. And perhaps the real shift is not that women are entering spaces they were once excluded from, but that those spaces are finally beginning to reveal who was already contributing to them. And still, there will always be voices that try to reduce, to doubt, to reframe. But those voices are not the measure of reality. They are the echo of old system trying to describe a world that no longer fits its language. So let them speak and let it pass. Because what endures is not commentary, it's creation, it's precision, it's intelligence, it is work that stands on its own strength. And for those who create, who think, who build, who care, who explore, there is no need to shrink in the presence of noise. The world does not move forward because it's approved. It moves forward because someone, somewhere, continues. Anyway, quietly, clearly, with certainty that does not need permission to exist. And that perhaps is the most enduring form of strength there is. Enjoy it, and I will be back soon.